Okay. All right, so a little quote to frame the next piece. This comes from pioneerspost.com. I have a list of various sources in the notes of this slide deck, and I'm happy to share the slides afterwards if anybody wants. But briefly, after the shakeup of COVID-19, many of us will be in crisis and survival mode. But now is also the time to be thinking about the future and recovery phase. There will be new market opportunities as services and products are reimagined, new needs from our communities, and a more open space for business models with purpose as we question an economic system that values GDP or profits above all else. That's sort of what brings me to this conversation today, what makes me interested in it, that I do think this is a time where we can push the envelope, move the needle a little bit to create social change. So to frame today, what is a social enterprise? Different people define that expression different ways. But I will say, for the sake of today's conversation, let's agree that a social enterprise blends profit and purpose, that impact is built into the business model. It's a non-negotiable piece of what that organization does. And that organization can be a for-profit or a non-profit legal structure. You see that legal structure doesn't really define how much good one does or an organization does for the world. What really matters is whether impact is built in and integral to the existence of that organization or that company or that firm. Key performance indicators include, but are not necessarily limited to, social or environmental outcomes, and that the key constituencies are both customers and beneficiaries, which can in some cases be a source of tension, but the best social enterprises blur or create a business model in which it's a symbiotic relationship, and that ties impact more integrally into the way the company functions. So by way of example, I'll just mention a couple. The United Teen Equality Center, UTEC in Lowell, Mass, is a nonprofit, what we think of as a traditional NGO or nonprofit organization. What they do is they work with at-risk youth, usually gang-involved youth, through very traditional community organizing work. They've got a lot of boots on the ground, people out building relationships in the communities. But what they've done to power their business model is really create enterprises, companies within UTEC that the young people are trained to work in and run and make these little companies thrive. They've got a catering business, a mattress recycling business. They make beautiful cutting boards that are sold in Whole Foods. But so they power their work as a social enterprise. Likewise, there are for-profit companies. I just ordered a bracelet for my niece online from a jewelry company where young women artisans are making handcrafted jewelry, but all of these young women came from a background where they were illegally trafficked and abused, and now their work, their art, is powering the existence of this company, which is feeding back to create impact. So we can go on all day with examples, but that's what we think of when we think of a social enterprise. But today, I actually want us to think of a socially responsible business more than a social enterprise, meaning impact doesn't have to be built into the business model. It doesn't have to be integral to the business model. However, the company, the organization, the nonprofit, for-profit, what have you, builds the thought of doing good for the world, good for people, good for planet, into their decision-making strategies. So that could be something very small, like giving away a tiny percentage of their profits to a local organization that they care about, or it can be laced throughout everything they do, where all of their decision-making is driven by what good or harm an outcome would make. It can be all sorts of levels. So today, as I said earlier, we really want to start at almost like the highest level or lowest level, however you think about it, where any good is going to be a step in the right direction, and we're just going to keep learning together. Hopefully it becomes a snowball effect where companies then, once they start doing some socially and environmentally impactful decisions, will do more. I'm not going to actually go through this whole content on the case for social responsibility because I don't want to waste the time. But again, we can talk offline or another time about why making socially and environmentally responsible choices is good for business, why it will help your bottom line and your long-term sustainability in a variety of ways, because of the way people want to make their purchases, because of the companies employees want to work for and stick with, and the ways that companies are now being seen by the community at large. So before we start talking really specific about what are responsible choices companies can make, I do want to take a minute and remember, like, why do this at all? What are the problems that companies, in many cases, helped to create, helped to perpetuate, but also have a lot of power to contribute to solving? So here's where I'm going to ask y'all to unmute your microphones and start sharing with me some ideas for what we might want to put on this slide. I have some of my own, but if you were to think about what are some of the concerns about our region, whether it's Middlesex County, Middletown, or Connecticut or beyond, what are some things we should keep in mind? Shout them out. Like climate change. What else? Anyone?
Are you looking for sort of big picture? I mean, I think about schools being unevenly funded and children having unequal outcomes in schools, you know, even within Middlesex County, that's the case.
Absolutely. Sometimes, right, that's called education achievement gap or opportunity gap, unequal funding of schools. Yep.
Well, I think that also then leads to children from different communities, let's say within our county, having then unequal access to jobs and the communities,
Yep.
resources.
Yeah. Opportunity is tied to where you're from, exactly. What else? Cost of living is an issue for some in Connecticut.
Job loss.
Yep, absolutely. Employment opportunities, and no right or wrong answers here. Throw out concepts.
Can I also add that as we potentially, as people want to start moving out of cities, that places like Connecticut are going to potentially be taking on more people who are city, I want to say refugees is the wrong word because there's no hardship if you're wealthy and leaving a city for your choice, but it will mean that there will be potential changes to our community, possibly for the better or worse.
Interesting. Do you think we'll have people coming in from other states?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, New York City specifically.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to call it in-migration from other states. That's something we were hoping for a few months ago, and now we have to think of what problems that might create. What else? Rebecca, from some of your work, what are some of the issues you're working to address?
Well, in Middletown in particular, just there's a higher percentage of single parents, and you know, many of them, a third of them, are living either at or below poverty. So just, you know, kind of looking at how we can create better systems to really increase the economic self-sufficiency, and, you know, just wraparound supports for families that are struggling to make ends meet. So things like that.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
What else are we dealing with? What are the challenges for small businesses?
Well, more than ever, people are doing online shopping. And how does that scale recover?
Yeah. Retail and restaurants, we just don't know. There's a lot to consider because when businesses can't transition fast enough and have to close their doors, there are all sorts of domino effects to Main Street and other factors of our society, which reminds me, homelessness and housing insecurity is something we should think about. Food insecurity and food justice. Whoops.
Reopening safely too, of course.
Yep, the COVID factor, totally. Justice, access to healthy food.
Not enough childcare to support all the people going back to work.
Yep, I second that. We're seeing that a lot with our Families with Middletown Works, definitely. And then just I want to put a plug also, just racial equity and just, thinking about people of color during this time, and how we can support our communities of color.
Thank you for raising that, absolutely. So we could spend more time on this. I appreciate everything that came out so far, and we could spend more time, but I think you get the point that the more we think about what's broken or what could be better about society, whether it's COVID related or not, the more we realize that all of us have a role to play in it, including businesses of all sizes, small, medium, large. So from here, yeah.
Michaela, can I just ask you, someone's trying to get into the meeting. I don't know if you can let them in.
Thank you. It's the same one. I keep clicking admit over and over and over and over again. It doesn't have a note. It has somebody's phone name.
Okay.
And it just
doesn't go anywhere. Okay.
No matter what.
I don't know what
I keep clicking all the buttons. Thank you for mentioning it. Though.
Yep.
My tiny screen has such trouble doing all the windows at once. Okay. Thank you. Tell me again if somebody else tries to get in, but this one says Galaxy Note 9, and I messaged the waiting room to say, Galaxy Note, I'm trying, and I can't get you in. All right. So from here, I really want to pivot. What time is it? 12:25. Good. To having a couple breakout rooms and giving you some time together to brainstorm, to just sort of dust off the cobwebs and unlock some ideas, small, medium, large, doesn't have to be genius ideas, but basically thinking through what actions businesses or organizations can take to create impact, or if they already see themselves as an impactful business, what other steps can they take? And by way of example, I think as little as stop printing paper receipts when a customer comes through the store, because it'll save, a tiny bit of environmental impact, or create a tiny bit of environmental impact, or something as radical as striving to be carbon neutral by 2025, or anything in between. It could involve, donating a fraction of 1% of profits to the Middletown Racial Justice Coalition, or it could be bringing in a consultant to do an entire racial equity audit and, multi-day implicit bias training and so on and so on. Anything in between. I don't want to put too many ideas in your head. Obviously, I do this all day, every day, so I could come up with tons of examples. But I want you to think about your own businesses, your friends' businesses, businesses that you patronize, whether they're bricks and mortar spaces or whether it's online experiences or service providers like childcare centers. How can all of us consider ways to be more impactful? Does anybody have any questions about the prompt before I send you off into some breakout rooms? Give me some nods if it makes any sense, or thumbs ups or anything. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to see, let's do this. I need a bigger screen, desperately. Okay. We're going to do 3 people in each room. I'm gonna let it go automatically, which means Zoom is gonna choose who you're with. I'm not gonna set up the rooms. I would ask that one person in each room take notes. Not in the chat, because I don't think the chat will import back into our main room when we come back. So take notes on a separate notepad, paper, or on your computer, so that when we come back in about 10 to 15 minutes, I think, you will remember all the ideas you came up with. The more ideas, the better, even if you think they're bad ideas, even if you think they're things most companies already do, even if you think they're impossible, but totally aspirational and would be wonderful. More here is better. Don't worry about quality, go for quantity. And as I'm giving these instructions, I'm thinking, actually, if you can type them out in a notepad on your computer or something, when we come back, I'm going to ask you to paste it into the chat for everybody to see. So one of you, amongst your group of 3, appoint a note taker and come up with as many ideas as you can. And like I said, I think we'll go with about 10 minutes of brainstorming, but maybe I'll pop into one of the breakouts and see how you're doing, or I'll message over to you once you're there. All right, any questions before I send you off into 3 rooms of 3 people each? Okay. I'm looking at those of you with cameras on. You look okay. All right, here we go. Is that Deborah? Hello?
Coach, we can't hear because your interference from yours. Coach, we can't really hear because interference from yours.
You're back. Y'all got kicked out. Let's see if everybody's here. All right. Still can't get that last person out of the waiting room. Zoom's been largely effective, but there's just often
Michaela,
yeah.
this happened to me today in a meeting I ran, and it's not possible. You're not going to succeed.
Okay, so give up.
I took an hour, it was an hour and a half meeting, and nothing I did could get people in. So I just think, don't worry about it.
Okay, poor person. Doesn't even have a name. It just says Galaxy Note. All right.
I texted her, so she's going to get the recording, and she's okay with that.
Okay, thank you. I also didn't get the recording on right at the beginning, but we're all good. So welcome back. Thank you for indulging me in that brainstorm. I can't wait to see what you came up with. So if note takers could paste your lists into the chat, no judgment, no assessment. We just want words out there.
Okay, where is the chat?
Oh, good. This is if you are on a computer, You may have to wiggle your mouse, your cursor up towards the top, and it may come down as a choice. You might have more with 3 dots. It might also be at the bottom. And if you don't see chat as one option, you might get more with 3 dots, and then you can click it there. Good.
Yeah, guys.
And
I posted
I'm sorry if you can hear background noise. There's 4 of us trying to work in a small space, but I'm sure you're all quite
Yes,
familiar.
we're all
Quite familiar with that. Okay, this is great. Good, good, good. All right. So as you see other people pasting in their comments, take a minute, skim them, see what they make you think of. Maybe they'll actually help you come up with additional ideas. See what they prompt in your mind. Good. Yes. Customers being less wasteful, no question.
More willing to.
I'm going to say, as we are talking about this, that I was so surprised how fast people were able to make the switch to not using plastic bags at grocery stores in Middletown. And it actually gave me like hope that people were not as fixed in their ways as I thought. I think that bigger changes could be possible. It's just like people made that shift really fast.
What a great example. Can anybody else think of examples where you saw change be made and it seemed less painful than you expected?
Just wearing masks in general, people, I think, quickly adapted to that. I mean, at first it was really strange. I mean, Ed and I would see it at West Wings in like January and February, and it was kind of like you kind of stepped back a minute, and then all of a sudden now, you know, you saw it in, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, it seemed kind of strange, and now it's like strange if you don't see one wearing masks. So I think the response to that was almost instant.
Yeah. One group talked about working from home. Talk a little bit more about what that would do in terms of impact. Why would that be a good thing? I'm not saying it is or isn't, but what about it feels like it would be a good thing to tackle any of the problems we discussed or just create a better society overall?
Lack of commute and the environmental impact of a commute. I mean, we saw the effects that COVID had on the environment being very positive. I think it also allows us to be more efficient with our resources in general, not just our cars and our gas and our everything, but with our time as well, and you know, just less impact. I don't know how to describe it, but just less of an impact out there.
Right. I'm taking some of your ideas and I'm putting them on Post-its. I hope you're able to see my screen. I know it's not ideal for viewing because it's still a little bit small. But as you look at this list and some of the ideas that came up in the breakouts, what other things come to your mind? What have we missed here? That's not what I wanted. I will say that I've been hearing a lot about employee ownership or part ownership models and profit sharing, and how that not only benefits the employees, but it ultimately creates more resilient companies where morale is high and outputs are high. It could be profit sharing, it could be actual co-op business model.
Along those same lines with that, employee or employer provided health insurance, I think it motivates people to be healthier and to take health into their own hands, because they know that they're contributing to the overall expense.
Absolutely. And along with that, what else might employers provide in order to create better outcomes for their staff and communities?
Like a
You mean like
meditation
PPE?
or a mindfulness room, or like a, a kind of like a resiliency building, breakout room, something like that, where there's, you can go in and maybe listen to music, maybe sit on on an exercise ball, just a space, a space to go to unwind, to just collect your thoughts, to have a quiet space, to take care of yourself, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Employer provided wellness initiatives, childcare. Somebody said paid time off in here. I actually haven't read all these carefully enough. Good. Good. What else? What other actions could companies take? Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. The research people were gonna start coming.
I think there's also opportunity in like this crisis to capitalize on some of the ways that people's mentality has shifted, potentially has shifted. Who do we value right now? And we're valuing people who are working in grocery stores, who are delivery. The people we don't necessarily value their work under normal circumstances. And I don't know. I don't know how we turn that into the idea of impact, and I don't know, but I feel like there's a lot of consumer mind shift, mentality shift that obviously needs to happen, but also in some ways is happening. But we will go right back to our crappy ways of not appreciating people who work in grocery stores, like the minute life goes back to normal, if somehow there's not intent to capitalize on that moment and make like sustainable consumer mental change and shift. So I guess part of what I would also like to see happen is like, how do grocery stores I would like to see grocery stores capitalize on this moment. And maybe they say, you know what, in response to this, we are doing whatever we're doing to be able to bump up employee pay as a permanent thing, not just this temporary thing. Or, I don't know what it is, but I would like to see us not lose this momentum.
That's such a great point. I had a call with one of these Silicon Valley venture capital type people the other day. They were talking about their portfolio companies, these, tech startups that, may do more harm than good in a lot of cases. But one topic they've been talking a lot about is, what do we say our core values are? Because if you look at those companies' business models, business plans, they'll have a list of their core values that make them sound really socially responsible. But now's the time to take a step back, look at those core values, and really assess whether you're living up to them, and if you're not, deciding how to. And I understand there are financial implications, and that sometimes this work will require taking a hit in the bottom line financially. But the argument here is that it's better in the long term, and it will actually generate both revenue and impact over time if done right. And the if done right is, of course, a challenging part. What are some other, before we the time here, anything else anybody can unlock in the back of their brains
Just,
that?
I mean, just on the, the continuing this particular thing, just how about, basic rules about fair wages and reasonable work hours, and safe working conditions. You know, just really the low skill jobs, we're seeing this now, the essential workers, and just, I mean, we cannot go back to normal. I mean, it shouldn't, we have to rebuild things to a new normal. But again, just, health aides and childcare workers, just really increasing their wages. And again, the access to affordable care for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
huge.
I'll jump in and say that can be done from a regulatory perspective, or it can be done from the grassroots, in this case, meaning the individual small businesses can make those decisions themselves with or without regulation. And I know someone's got to give it as a trade-off, and there are costs involved with making these commitments, but whether they're done from top down or bottom up or laterally, they are necessary, clearly more now than ever. Before we run out of time, I want to also mention just the data collection and privacy ethics here. That is something else that I've been hearing a lot about, that companies should just be thinking about how they're collecting data, what's happening with that data, and how that data may be used to harm or benefit different subgroups. And because it is 12:57, as much as I want to keep brainstorming with you and I want to keep telling you other things I've been hearing about in other sessions I'm part of, I am going to stop here. And I am going to just scroll over on my whiteboard here to this last category that we're not going to take time to talk about because we don't have the minutes and because I think we need time to sort of marinate on some of this stuff before we decide what actions any of us could take or what actions we could encourage our friends and colleagues to take with their own businesses. But that's sort of the big question mark going forward, is what are the small or large actions you can take to make your work more just, more fair, more impactful, lead to better outcomes for people and planet. And how can you do those without taking too much of a hit on the bottom line? And how can you do those so that the long-term improvements outweigh the short-term pains of doing that? And that's the end of the sentence. That is not answer that question. That is think about that question. And if we can be helpful to each other, or if there are people who are not on this call who could be helpful in this conversation, I'm really committed to trying to get them engaged and involved, and would be happy to continue this conversation with anybody offline. In our last minute, is there anything anybody wants to share? Either make sure the rest of the group knows, or even feedback about what they found interesting about this and what they might do next. I just want to open the floor in case, but without comment, we will.
Like I just want to say, like, I feel like this is such a great conversation, and I would love to just be able to just have kind of like more of these conversations with people, just to spark my own awareness. But then just, I'm thinking just even of myself, it's like, how many people even think about this? I feel like we need to have more dialogues and more conversations about this, and different ways that we can act socially and environmentally responsible, and different things we can take individually and collectively, and just ways we can promote it. So I think I would love to just see another kind of conversation. I don't know how or when, but I would love that.
Thanks. I think that's a nice prompt for us to think about where and when, and maybe we can do it in a setting where businesses are coming together anyway for other reasons, and we can pepper their agenda with this kind of content. And I would look to all of you to help me do that, and certainly the MEWS Plus. So with that, I will say thank you to the MEWS Plus for asking me to do this and for hosting this session. And thanks to all of you for carving out time and pushing past the point of Zoom fatigue to do yet another Zoom. I give you credit for that. And I will see some of you, I hope all of you, in person sooner than later.
Yes.
Be well,
Thank you,
everybody.
Michaela.
Thanks,
Thank
Michaela.
you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Take good care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.